Hi there. I am so glad you're here today. We're going to be talking about handling the haters and why it's important to learn to shut out the hate and learn from their perspectives. So we all have these situations that we deal with. We end up with haters in the world who question everything we do. They're the critics, and there's not much we can do about it. So how do we deal with those folks, and how do we get them and learn from them and have them help us grow as people? So if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat and I'll be paying attention to that and we'll go from there. So this is a quote that I came across again this week and I love it. It's, who does she think she is? It appears she is someone living her life unconcerned with who you think she is. It's from Brendan Burchard, who is in the personal development space. But I love this because it's so important for us to remember that it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks of us. Their opinion is their truth. It's their perspective. It's not ours. They don't get to tell us how to act. They don't get to tell you what to do. You get to decide that. We get to decide that for ourselves. So why worry about it? Why let them control what we're going to do? So critics exist, and we're always going to have somebody who is kind of gunning for us, if you will, or that's how it feels. It feels like they're gunning for us, and it doesn't matter who, where we are, what we're doing. There's always somebody. And a while ago in my career, there was this guy, Nate, and we were at sister factories. We weren't at the same, I was working in manufacturing, and we were at sister factories. And we were in equivalent positions. We had the same role. In fact, I was in the role in a bigger factory. So to some extent, I had the higher role. I mean, not really. We were sister factories, ran pretty independently, but we were equals. Now, I hadn't been at the company very long, and I was younger than he was. He'd been there a long time and had a lot more experience. Totally get that. He nitpicked everything I did. He made me crazy because he didn't like anything. And so annually, our two factories would send people out into the field to talk to customers. We made construction equipment. So we'd go out and look at units and get feedback on the area that we dealt with. And so a trip came up. It was going to be Nate, myself, a couple other folks from his office, his factory, and then somebody from a third factory that was a joint venture with our company and another. And so our equivalent from that factory, Pete, was going to come along. So Nate, of course, assigned me, the junior person out of the whole group, to make all the arrangements. So I figured out our agenda. I talked to the field reps, scheduled them, got everything sorted out. What clients should we go, customers should we go see? How should we do this? What order? Blah, 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 blah. It's a week-long trip, a lot of logistics. And so I made all of these arrangements, and he got really, so when we got there and we started meeting up with, hi, Andrea, we're meeting up with the field rep, and the first thing he does when we meet this field rep is start questioning the agenda. Well, is this what we should be doing? Is this the order? This doesn't seem like this makes sense. And I'm like, you dumped all this on me, and now you're questioning everything I'm doing. I didn't say that. That was in my head. And so I looked at the field rep and said, Tom, isn't this the schedule that you and I discussed and what you had recommended we do? And he went, yes, it is. So he shut up for a little while. But the whole trip, a week of him nitpicking, well, why are we going here now? And why are we doing this? And he kept doing it in front of other people. So it really, it drove me nuts. So it was just this constant critique. And nobody likes to live in that. By the end of the trip, I was practically in tears, which is not me. But it was just that frustrating. And I was furious by the time we got back to our home factories because there's no reason. We were peers. No reason to behave that way. Pete didn't have those issues. The other guys didn't have those issues, just Nate. So critics do exist. And so the thing to do to help deal with those critics is to work on gaining perspective. Because it's interesting. They have a different perspective than we do. And sometimes that perspective is important. One of the things that always comes to my mind is we judge ourselves based on intention. We judge others based on impact. So when somebody says, well, when you really upset me when you did this, well, that's not what I intended. So, but they're dealing with the impact. They don't know what our intentions were. They have no idea. Unless they're a mind reader, and I haven't met any of those. So here, when we look at it, we've got to understand what impact we're having. So it's really important. Sometimes those critics can give us insight into the impact we're having. So first thing to do is ask yourself, why might they be that way? Why are they being critical? Why are they having issues? And I had to do that with Nate. And there were a couple of things. One, he had a long history of not liking to be corrected, and he always wanted to be the smartest person in the room. He was the expert. Nobody should challenge him and question him. That was his personality. So him asking questions, questioning everything I did or said, he did that to everybody. The other guys from his factory that were on that trip, they were saying he was always like that, and he did that to them. They're like, don't ignore him. And there was actually also, I think, some cultural things. He was from a culture where there was, it's much more of a patriarchal society. And so he tended not to like having a woman in an equal position. So now he wasn't always that way, but he could be that way. So ask what's going on with them? What might be happening? If you're being really critical, what's happening? Before you jump to, well, they hate me, they're trying to tear me down, take a minute, figure out what it is. Then when you kind of understand where they might be coming from, look at what they're telling you and see, is there any information in there that's worth keeping? Maybe, maybe not. But if there is, keep the information. Ditch the emotions, get rid of all of that, but keep the information. And then discard anything that doesn't matter. If it does not apply, if it's something that you can't fix, like I couldn't fix that I was a female in an equal position to Nate. That wasn't, well, I could have quit. Not going to happen. It just, what can I fix? What can I do? What can I use? Now, what was interesting is I really did learn a lot from Nate. Some of it, but not what he necessarily meant for me to learn. But I did learn from him. So the impact of these haters and these critics is the downside. It creates doubt. It demoralizes you. It creates self-doubt. You start wondering, well, am I fit for being in this role? When I first was dealing with Nate and he was constantly questioning everything, even though I had figured stuff out, he would question everything. And he would challenge me on the things I was seeing in my factory. I didn't challenge him on what he was seeing in his. And he would be like, well, no, that's not how, you're not seeing that. Yeah, I am. You don't know. So, but it starts creating self-doubt. And when he did it in public, it created doubt in the minds of others, or it could have. Fortunately, it didn't. He had enough of a reputation for being this way that people didn't necessarily think badly of me because he was being a jerk and constantly questioning everything I said. So people who knew him took him with a grain of salt. Fortunately, but it can and it does create doubt in the minds of others. The person doing it is credible. But the upside of having a critic or kind of paying attention to the haters a little bit is that it adds perspective. You're getting another view of how you're showing up in the world. And there can be useful information in that. It can help strengthen you. If you can handle these critics with professionalism and be grace under fire and deal well with them, it builds your confidence and it builds your credibility with others. So it really is important to do that. So for me, with Nate, one of the upside, the perspective that I gained, him questioning everything. We were then later working on a joint project between the two factories, and he questioned our supplier nonstop to the point I thought he was being blatantly rude, but he was constantly questioning them. And then he transferred, I transferred, stuff happened. And as we went live with the project, he was gone. There were issues that came up from the supplier end. And I had trusted one of the supplier people, and don't get me wrong, he was trustworthy. But I didn't push him to make sure that they were really looking at everything. We were on the bleeding edge of something. And that's a dangerous place. And we ran into something that was unexpected, unforeseen. It shocked them, our supplier, as much as it stunned us. So it wasn't that they were lying to me, they were withholding information. They weren't digging deep and checking everything. They were checking everything they knew to check, but they didn't look at everything. So we got caught and almost had a complete disaster, which fortunately we got through, but it really made me realize that I needed to ask more questions. I didn't need to ask him the way Nate did, because he was just belittling people. And I don't think you have to put people down to raise yourself up. But seeking information is really important. And that was a perspective that, yeah, I'd been hearing that. My boss had been telling me that and all this. But by really understanding what had gone on with Nate, I realized, you know what? Sometimes asking more questions can help you get to really kind of get down into the meat of it, get the details out, and maybe avoid disaster, or at least know how to prepare for it, because there's a risk. And it doesn't have to be done badly, but you should be asking more questions. That's a perspective I needed. I was too trusting that they were telling me everything. And I think they were telling me everything they knew, but they weren't asking enough questions either. So that's something I ended up learning and putting to good use as my career progressed. So there is that upside. So making it work for you. First and foremost, breathe. If you feel like you're being attacked, just pause, take several deep breaths, get oxygen in you. It will help fight that fight or flight reaction, which your amygdala is going to fire off when you feel attacked. Take deep breaths and just calm yourself. Work on breathing and taking a moment. Count to 10, 20, 100, whatever it takes, just take that moment. And then avoid arguing. You can't win. You're not going to win with them, so don't get in an argument. They're just going to get more entrenched. Wait, skip the arguing. Just avoid it. And back to what I said in the beginning, their opinion of you is none of your business, and it doesn't have to impact what you do. They don't get to control you. They don't get to say what you do. They're just giving you your perspective, their perspective. And then be assertive. Last week, we talked about being assertive. If you didn't see that video is out there on the replay page. Assert yourself. If they're coming at you, use assertive statements to shut it down. If they're being really disrespectful, shut it down in the moment. And I did that a couple of times, I'm sure, to Nate. Nate, I hear that you haven't experienced this. This is what we're seeing. Our systems are different than yours. We're seeing something different. I'm glad you're not seeing it at your place. And shut him down. And I know I did that to him several times. It's not about saying he's wrong and I'm right. It's just saying, hey, I hear what you're saying. Here's what I think. Here's what I'm experiencing. Here's what I see. Just go there. And that's awesome. Then the last thing, let it go. Remember, their opinion of you is theirs. They take the things that are valuable out of what they're telling you and trash the rest. Now, I love that little, on our computers, that little trash can where you can throw stuff away off your desktop. Basically, picture doing that in your head. You're getting all this feedback, you're getting all this negativity and all this criticism. Glean out what's useful, because maybe in my case, I needed to ask more questions, or maybe I needed to be more assertive, or whatever it is. Glean those useful pieces out, and then picture taking all the rest and throwing it in the trash can. Just get rid of it. And it really can be quite liberating. So that trip that I was on with Nate and all, I'd never really challenged him directly. I just kind of avoided him, spent more time talking to the field reps and, what's going on down here? Tell me what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And I could talk their language real better than he could. And so I got into it. And so I would talk to them and I just kind of subtly drifted away. So I spent less time with Nate, more time with people who actually wanted to talk to me and valued my opinion. And then when we got back to the factory, I was fuming. And the next Monday morning, I get back into the office and I'm sitting down. My boss comes over and says, when you get done going through your emails, come in and tell me how it went. I walked in his office and shut his door. I rarely shut his door. Well, I walked in and I almost slammed it shut. And I'm like, I will never go on another trip with him unless you or his boss are there. He's like, oh my God. And the boss was like, ah. He didn't like confrontation. And so I told him what he was doing. And at that point, Nate was not allowed to go on trips unless his boss or my boss could go, because he would have done that to anybody. And it was disrespectful. And so I had backing from my boss. The next annual trip, he didn't go. One of the other guys from his factory that was on that trip, he and I went. It was just the two of us. We didn't take a big entourage. And it was just the two of us. And we went out and had a great trip. Saw a ton of stuff, got a lot of information. And guess what? There was no drama, which was the best part of it. So I didn't challenge him in the moment. I asserted myself by asking Tom, the field rep, hey, Tom, isn't this the schedule you suggested? I was asserting myself without in his face, you're wrong, this is the way it is. I was kind of getting that social proof that, yes, I knew what I was doing. And then I asserted myself with my boss, and then it was gone. And I took the lessons that I learned from Nate, and I ended up becoming a better engineer and better able to move up. And interestingly enough, I moved to the factory Nate had been at. They moved him somewhere else to a different division, and he flourished over there. I ended up moving up at the factory, the sister factory. At my new factory, I moved up quite a bit. He never moved up. He was never going to go into a leadership role because he couldn't handle it. I did end up in leadership. So it was interesting that while he hated having a woman being equal to him and questioned everything, guess what? I was better at it than he was. Technically, he had me probably beat hands down. I don't doubt that at all. But it's not all about the technical. Sometimes it's about dealing with people. So sometimes the haters are just dead wrong. So it really boils down to you get to control how you fuel your growth. There are going to be critics. There are going to be the haters. That's fine. They have a perspective that sometimes it helps to hear and see. So listen to what they're doing, listen to what they're saying, and then take what you can out of it and ditch all the rest. Blow it all off. It doesn't matter. And use it to fuel your growth so that you can get where you want to be. Use the information you're getting to grow. And if you stay professional, polite, and respectful, it shows everyone how you're going to behave under fire, which is a great leadership trait. I ended up having a reputation of being grace under fire, which helped me move up. I was seen as somebody who could talk to anybody. They would let me talk. They would let me talk to the CEO of a Fortune 100 company, and I could talk to the UAW workers out on the shop floor and anybody in between. And they routinely, I never did talk to the CEO. They routinely put me in front of senior leadership out of corporate, senior leadership within the division. They didn't care. They put me up talking to anybody because they saw that I could handle it. So how you handle your haters can really help you grow. So that's all I have today. If you have any questions, type them in chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Next week, we are going to be talking about silencing your inner critic. There's some overlap, but there are some interesting things about dealing with that inner critic. You know, that voice in the back of your head that tells you, yeah, no, you screwed it up last time, you're going to screw it up this time. We're going to talk about that. I am going to stop sharing my screen. Any thoughts or comments? Hi there. Go ahead.
Hi, I just didn't want to.
Oh, I can't hear
my
you.
video.
Are you still muted?
No. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
There's no volume. I don't know. You can just maybe type it in and we'll go from there. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I understand. I like to close my video when I can. So thank you. I'm really glad you were here, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Oh, yeah. I'm sure your industry, you're in construction. Yeah, there's a lot of haters in that industry, especially for women. So I hope you found some nuggets that you can take back and help you deal with those guys. Have a great day, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Bye.